Bernard Baruch was a South Carolina financier and a complex political figure who became one of the most influential advisors of the 20th century. Bernard Menays Baruch, financier, presidential advisor, and elder statesman, was born in Camden, South Carolina on August 19, 1870. He came from an immigrant family. He had a commanding presence with his tall stature and dignified bearing. Baruch's early years were marked by intelligence and ambition. He attended the City College of New York, graduating in 1889 at the age of 19 with a degree in science. His education there shaped his understanding of analytical thinking and problem solving, though his later career would test those skills in the most challenging arenas of finance and government. After graduating from college, Baruch began working in the financial district of New York City. He started as an office boy for a wholesale drug company, earning $3 a week. However, his ambitions lay elsewhere. In 1891, he secured a position with the brokerage firm of A. Houseman and Company. This was the beginning of a career that would make him one of the wealthiest men in America. Baruch proved to be a natural at the stock market. He had an intuitive understanding of market psychology and the courage to make bold investments. He studied companies carefully, analyzing their financial statements and business prospects before committing his capital. Unlike many speculators who relied on tips and rumors, Baruch did his homework. By 1896, at the age of 26, Baruch had earned enough money to purchase a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. He became a partner in Houseman and Company and began building his own fortune through shrewd investments. His specialty was identifying undervalued companies, buying their stock, and then selling when the market recognized their true worth. Baruch's investment philosophy was based on careful research and disciplined execution. He believed in getting all available information about a company before investing. He would visit factories, talk to managers, study competitors, and analyze market conditions. This thorough approach gave him an edge over other speculators who relied on intuition or inside information. During the early 1900s, Baruch made a series of successful investments that established him as one of Wall Street's most astute operators. He invested in copper mining companies, sugar refineries, railroads, and rubber plantations. He had a particular talent for reorganizing troubled companies and making them profitable. By 1910, Baruch had accumulated a fortune estimated at several $1 million. He was not yet 40 years old but had already achieved financial independence beyond most people's dreams. However, wealth alone did not satisfy him. He began to think about how he could use his success to serve broader purposes. Baruch's entry into public service came through his friendship with Woodrow Wilson. Baruch had supported Wilson's campaign for president in 1912, contributing both money and advice. When Wilson won, Baruch expected no special favors, but the president recognized his abilities and began consulting him on economic matters. When the United States entered World War I in April 1917, the government faced enormous challenges in mobilizing the economy for war production. The country needed to rapidly expand production of weapons, ammunition, ships, aircraft, and countless other military supplies. Traditional market mechanisms were inadequate for this task. Wilson created the War Industries Board to coordinate industrial production for the war effort. In March 1918, he appointed Bernard Baruch as chairman of the board. It was a position of immense power and responsibility. Baruch would essentially control American industrial production for the duration of the war. As chairman of the War Industries Board, Baruch demonstrated remarkable administrative abilities. He organized American industry with ruthless efficiency. He set production priorities, allocated raw materials, standardized products, and negotiated prices. He had the authority to commandeer factories and force companies to accept government contracts. Baruch ran the War Industries Board like a business, surrounding himself with talented executives and delegating authority while maintaining overall control. He worked 18-hour days, making countless decisions about production schedules, resource allocation, and industrial priorities. The board had to balance competing demands from the military services, allied governments, and civilian needs. Under Baruch's leadership, American industrial production increased dramatically. Factories that had been producing consumer goods were converted to war production. Shipyards that had been idle were reopened and expanded. Steel mills, chemical plants, and munitions factories operated at maximum capacity. The War Industries Board proved that government could effectively organize economic activity on a massive scale. When the war ended in November 1918, Baruch had earned a reputation as an organizational genius. He had shown that careful planning and coordination could achieve results that free market chaos could not. His success would influence economic thinking for decades to come. After the war, Baruch accompanied President Wilson to the Paris Peace Conference. He served as an economic advisor to the American delegation, helping to negotiate the financial and economic provisions of the Treaty of Versailles. He argued for moderate reparations against Germany, warning that excessive demands would destabilize Europe and possibly lead to future conflict. His advice was largely ignored, and the harsh reparations imposed on Germany would indeed contribute to economic instability and the rise of extremism. Throughout the 1920s, Baruch remained active in both business and politics. He continued to invest in the stock market, though more cautiously than in his younger days. He had learned that preserving wealth was as important as accumulating it. He also served as an informal advisor to politicians of both parties, offering counsel on economic and financial matters. Baruch was one of the few major investors who sensed danger in the overheated stock market of the late 1920s. He began selling stocks and moving into cash and government bonds. When the stock market crashed in October 1929, Baruch was largely protected. His foresight saved him from the financial ruin that befell many of his contemporaries. The Great Depression that followed the crash vindicated Baruch's caution. As the economy collapsed and unemployment soared, people looked for leaders who understood finance and could offer solutions. Baruch became an elder statesman, consulted by presidents and congressional leaders about how to address the economic crisis. When Franklin Roosevelt was elected president in 1932, many expected Baruch to receive a cabinet position. However, Roosevelt was wary of Baruch's independence and did not offer him a formal position in the administration. Instead, Baruch served as an informal advisor, offering counsel when asked but holding no official title. This arrangement suited Baruch well enough. He preferred to maintain his independence rather than become part of any administration's bureaucracy. He could speak his mind without worrying about political consequences. He could criticize policies he disagreed with while supporting those he favored. Throughout the New Deal era, Baruch offered advice on various economic programs. He supported some initiatives while opposing others. He favored public works programs to create employment but was skeptical of some of the more radical experiments in economic planning. He believed in capitalism but recognized that government had a role in stabilizing the economy and protecting workers. When World War II began in Europe in 1939, Baruch again turned his attention to military preparedness. He warned that America would eventually be drawn into the conflict and needed to begin mobilizing its industrial capacity. He advocated for creating a new War Industries Board similar to the one he had led in World War I. After Pearl Harbor brought America into the war in December 1941, Baruch's advice became more influential. He served on various committees and commissions dealing with war production and economic mobilization. However, he never received the kind of formal authority he had held in the First War. Roosevelt preferred to distribute power among multiple agencies rather than concentrating it in a single board. Nevertheless, Baruch's influence was substantial. His experience from World War I provided valuable lessons for the current mobilization effort. He advised on production priorities, resource allocation, and price controls. His office became a destination for officials seeking advice on industrial matters. During the war, Baruch also began thinking about the post-war world. He recognized that the atomic bomb would fundamentally change international relations and military strategy. After the war ended in 1945, he became deeply involved in efforts to control nuclear weapons. In 1946, President Harry Truman appointed Baruch as the American representative to the United Nations Atomic Energy Commission. Baruch was tasked with presenting an American plan for international control of atomic energy. The plan he presented, known as the Baruch Plan, called for creating an international authority that would control all atomic energy activities, from mining uranium to building weapons. The plan included provisions for inspections and sanctions against violators. It proposed that once this international system was in place, the United States would destroy its atomic weapons and share nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. The Baruch plan was idealistic but also pragmatic. It recognized that nuclear weapons posed an existential threat to humanity and that some form of international control was necessary. However, it also protected American interests by ensuring that inspections and controls would be in place before the United States gave up its nuclear monopoly. The Soviet Union rejected the Baruch plan, viewing it as an attempt to maintain American nuclear superiority while preventing the Soviets from developing their own weapons. The failure to reach agreement on atomic energy control marked the beginning of the nuclear arms race that would define the Cold War. Although the Baruch plan failed, it established principles that would influence arms control negotiations for decades. The ideas of international inspections, verification, and sanctions against violators became standard elements of arms control proposals. Baruch had helped establish the framework for thinking about nuclear weapons control. After his work on atomic energy, Baruch gradually withdrew from active involvement in government affairs. He was now in his late 70s and his health was declining. However, he remained a respected elder statesman whose opinions were sought on major issues. Throughout the 1950s, Baruch continued to comment on public affairs through speeches and articles. He warned about the dangers of inflation and government deficits. He advocated for strong national defense and vigilance against Soviet expansion. He supported civil rights and opposed racial discrimination. Baruch maintained an office in New York and spent winters in South Carolina. He entertained visitors, granted interviews to journalists, and corresponded with political leaders. He enjoyed his role as an elder statesman, offering wisdom gained from decades of experience in finance and government. Baruch had married Annie Griffin in 1897, and they had 3 children together. His family life was relatively private compared to his public career. He was a devoted father and took pride in his children's accomplishments. His wife Annie died in 1938, leaving him a widower for the last decades of his life. In his later years, Baruch became known for conducting informal meetings while sitting on a park bench in Lafayette Square across from the White House or in Central Park in New York. These bench conferences became legendary. Politicians, journalists, and business leaders would sit with him on the bench while he dispensed advice and observations. The image of Baruch on his park bench became iconic, symbolizing accessible wisdom and democratic discourse. Baruch was also known for his philanthropy. He donated millions of dollars to medical research, education, and various charitable causes. He established the Baruch School of Business at City College of New York. He supported hospitals and medical research facilities. He believed that wealth carried obligations and that successful people should give back to society. Throughout his long life, Baruch maintained certain principles that guided his actions. He believed in thorough preparation and careful analysis before making decisions. He valued independence and was willing to stand alone when his judgment differed from popular opinion. He believed that public service was a duty of successful citizens. On June 20, 1965, Bernard Baruch died at his home in New York City. He was 94 years old. His death marked the end of an era. He had lived through extraordinary changes in American society, from the industrial age through 2 world wars to the atomic age and the Cold War. Baruch's funeral was attended by hundreds, including political leaders, business executives, and old friends. He was buried in Flushing Cemetery in Queens, New York. In death, as in life, Baruch was remembered as a man who had used his talents in service to his country. Baruch's legacy is substantial and multifaceted. He demonstrated that success in business could be translated into effective public service. His leadership of the War Industries Board in World War I showed that government could successfully organize economic activity when necessary. His work on atomic energy control established principles that remain relevant today. Modern historians have generally viewed Baruch favorably, recognizing his genuine contributions to American economic and political life. They note his ability to see beyond immediate concerns to longer-term trends and dangers. They acknowledge his willingness to serve without seeking personal gain or political power. Yet Baruch was not without his critics. Some viewed him as too influential for someone who held no elected office. Others questioned whether his advice always served the public interest or sometimes reflected his own financial interests. His relationship with the press, which was generally favorable, led some to accuse him of being more style than substance. Nevertheless, the overall assessment of Bernard Baruch remains positive. He was a self-made man who rose from modest circumstances to great wealth through intelligence and hard work. He then used that success as a platform for public service. He advised presidents, shaped policy, and contributed to American success in 2 world wars. Perhaps the most significant aspect of Baruch's career was his ability to bridge different worlds. He understood both business and government, finance and politics, private interest and public service. He could speak the language of Wall Street and Washington with equal fluency. This made him an invaluable translator and mediator between these often conflicting spheres. Baruch also represented a particular American type, the financier statesman. Unlike hereditary aristocrats who served in government as a matter of tradition, Baruch earned his position through achievement. Unlike professional politicians who depended on elections, he maintained his independence through personal wealth. He could afford to tell presidents uncomfortable truths because he needed nothing from them. In the end, Bernard Baruch was neither a great financier in the mold of J.P. Morgan nor a great statesman in the mold of Benjamin Franklin, but rather a successful man who used his success to serve his country in times of need. His legacy includes both his wartime service and his efforts to control nuclear weapons, as well as his example of how private success can enable public service. He is remembered today primarily for his role as an advisor to presidents and for his park bench wisdom, which is perhaps fitting for a man who valued influence over power and counsel over command. Baruch remained even in death a man who had successfully navigated the worlds of finance and government, remembered for his service and his wisdom rather than for any single great achievement.